Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this tutorial, we're going to talk about what is SQL and types of SQL statements. So in our last session, we talked about the database management system, relational database management system. Okay, so as we talked about the database, we'll be storing all the information, all the related data in the form of tables. Okay, so tables are the part of database. So first of all, you can take an example of databases like Oracle, Sybase, SQL Server, DB2, MySQL, etc. So these are all the examples of database. Now, what is SQL? So SQL basically stands for Structured Query Language. Now, within the database, we'll be performing two operations, access and manipulation, right? So when I say accessing data from the database or manipulation within the database, access, that means selecting data from the database. When I say manipulation, that means inserting, updating, and deleting data within the database, right? So these are the operations which we'll be performing in the database, and this we can do with the help of structured query language or SQL. So this is also pronounced as SQL. Both are same. So SQL is basically used to communicate with the database to perform all these operations. So it's a kind of a communicator. Okay. So SQL basically used to communicate with the database to perform DB operations. When I say DB operations, so DB operations are accessing data and manipulation of data, selecting data, inserting, updating, and deleting data within the database. So this was all about the SQL statements. Now, the types of SQL statements we have in database. So they have categorized these SQL statements into different category. Okay, so first of all, we'll talk about the first category, which is DDL, data definition language. Okay, so as we talked about the database, all the information or all the related data will be stored in the form of tables. So we need to create these tables. First of all, we need to create the database. Database is a collection of tables, a collection of DB objects. Okay, so to create databases or to create DB objects, to create tables, we need some kind of language or some kind of SQL statements. So all the statements comes under DDL, data definition language. So when I say creating database or creating data objects, for that purpose we have create statement used for creating DB objects and database. Now, once we have created those data objects, there is a possibility that we need to modify the structure. So if I take an example of a table, suppose you have created a table with 5 columns, and later you have to add 2-3 columns at the end or anywhere in the middle also. Okay, so you want to make the change in the structure of a table. So for that purpose, we have alter command to add and modify fields. So to add new columns and to modify existing columns. When I say modify, we want to make the changes in the data type, we want to make the changes in the name of the column. So for all this purpose, we will be using alter command. Okay. Now, suppose you have created few tables and you want to delete few tables from them. So you want to delete few tables from the database. So for that purpose, we have a drop command. To delete DB objects from the database. Now, the next command which comes under this category is rename. So you have created your DB objects and later you want to change the name of a table, change the name of some DB objects. So for that purpose, we'll be using rename statement. Renaming DB objects. So in all these commands, if you see, we are playing with the structure. We are not playing with the data. We did not talk about the data. Okay, we are only playing with the structure and DB objects. We are creating a structure, we are modifying the structure, we are dropping the structure, and we are renaming the DB objects. Right? Now, the next command which comes under this category is truncate. So truncate is basically used to remove all the data from your table. So just note this point, this will remove all the data from the tables and not your table. So for that purpose, to drop the table, you have a drop statement. Truncate is basically used to remove all the data from the table, including spaces. So we'll talk about this command in more detail in our next session, that why truncate comes under the data definition language. Okay, because in these commands, I told you that we are playing with the structure of the database. Or in the DDL, we actually play with the definition of DB objects. We create the definition, we modify the definition, we rename the definition. Okay. But only in the truncate, we are dealing with the data. Okay. But just note down this point that this is basically used to remove all the data from the table, including spaces. And we'll talk about this and this command and other command which comes under this category, which is delete and truncate, and their differences. We will talk about these in our next session. Okay. Now the next category is DML, which is data manipulation language. So now in the data manipulation language, we'll be playing with the data. We'll be dealing with the data in the database. So now we'll be performing these operations: accessing data and manipulation of data. So accessing means the selecting data from the database. So for that purpose, we have select statement. When I say manipulation, that means inserting, updating, and deleting. So for inserting, we have insert statement. For deletion, we have delete statement. And for updating or modifying the records, we have update statement. So if you see, we are not touching the structure of data, but we are playing with the data. Okay. So whenever we are trying to make any change in the structure, we'll talk about data definition language. These commands comes under data definition language. Whenever we are trying to talk about where we are trying to deal with the data within the database, we will talk about the data manipulation language. So those are all the commands will be dealing with the database or data within the database. Okay. Now the next command which comes under the SQL statement categories is DCL, which is data control language. So now you have created a data structure, you have inserted your data in the database. You need to control the access. You need to control data access for the users. Okay, so for that purpose, we have DCL statements. So the commands which comes under this category are grant and revoke. So grant will be used to assign privileges to the users. And revoke will be used to revoke those privileges. Okay. Now the next category which we have in SQL statement is TCL. That is our transaction control language. And the commands which comes under this category are commit, rollback, and save point. So suppose you want to save, you have performed all these operations, insert, update, or delete, or you want to save the changes permanently in the database. For that purpose, we will be using a commit statement. So to save the changes permanently within the database, you will be firing a commit statement, commit command. To save the changes permanently. Now suppose you have inserted or deleted few records from the table and you don't want to do that. Okay, so for that purpose you have this statement to roll back the changes, but till last commit. So suppose you have deleted something from the database wrongly and after that you have fired a commit command, then in that case you cannot roll back. You cannot roll back your changes. Okay, so the rollback will be used to get the changes back till last commit. Now what is save point? So let's take an example. You have created 3 transactions, like you're inserting data into the table, you're deleting few records, you're updating few records, and after that you have rollback. Okay, now suppose you've inserted records successfully, you have deleted records successfully, but at the time of update statement you have some issues. Okay, so what will happen in the normal cases, whenever this command will run, this will roll back all the changes till this point. Okay, so even if you have you don't have any issues in the insertion and deletion, the Oracle or any database will roll back those changes. Okay, now I don't want to do that. Okay, so I want to roll back till last successful command. Okay, so for that purpose I'll be creating a save point. So let's say after inserting I have created a save point S1, then after deletion I have created another save point S2, then after updating I have created another save point S3. So now what I can do, like I have executed my insert statement, then I have created a save point. Now after deletion, if there is any issue, roll back to S1, roll back to last successful statement. In the same way, here also roll back to S2, last successful statement. Okay, so this is how the save point command will work. Okay, so these are the few important commands which we'll be using throughout our Oracle or any database. In any database, those are the commands, mainly used commands. Okay, so thanks for watching my video, and like, share, and subscribe to my channel to get more updates.